Hey guys, I'm Keith Phoenix. I want to take you through a 30-day study on Proverbs. If you're a man that's trying to lead your family, the work that you're doing, the life you're trying to live, you know this isn't easy. And we're hit with pressures, distractions, and even a culture that tends to pull us in every different direction. So that's why we're going to dive into Proverbs. This book isn't just a bunch of clever quotes. It's a father who's handing his son the keys to wise living. And it's a blueprint for how to walk in truth and make solid decisions and live a life that actually matters. So, right out of the gate, Proverbs tells us where all of this starts. In Proverbs 1, verse 7, it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge." And on the flip side, fools, they despise wisdom and instruction. Well, this verse absolutely punches us in the gut because wisdom doesn't just start with how much we know, but it starts with who you're listening to. It starts with fearing the Lord, and then we respect him through that. And we respect him enough to not just read the words, but to put to action by truly listening to the things that he says. We have to hear, we have to respond, and we have to do. So, as we are listening, it isn't just a fearing God isn't about just being scared of God, although we, in a sense, are. We're scared of God and his justice. He isn't out to get us, though. He's out to uh, show his grace and mercy eternally to us. It's about knowing who God is and knowing that we are so far from that. While we're created in his image, we are so far from the love and mercy and justice of God. It's about trusting that in the short term, our ways make a lot of sense. But if we're looking for long term satisfaction, that his ways are better. And often, what's so difficult about that is that those ways that are better are harder than the short term ways that make a lot of sense to us. So, Proverbs 1 says, "Listen first to God. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom." But also, Proverbs 1 warns us about getting pulled into the wrong crowd. You're the average of the 5 people that you hang out with the most. Maybe you've heard that saying before. Well, it talks about people that you could hang around with who offer quick money, fast rewards, and no consequences. So, power, money, fame, pleasure, but no consequences. But these things apply way beyond crime. These things apply on a personal level. It's any shortcut that you can take that will cost you your character. So not only have you heard this maybe with people around you, maybe there's people that you hang around with, maybe friends that you hang out with who are seeking those shortcuts, seeking fast money, seeking fast rewards, and saying there's no consequences, no consequences of sacrificing long-term happiness, long-term gain, um, but instead focusing on what they can get in the short term. But think about your own process of thinking every single day. Yeah, I heavily believe in the Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle, that 80% of the efforts that we take are going to produce um, no results. And 20% of the efforts that we do are going to produce all of the results, the 80% of the results, in a nutshell. Well, I've kind of wondered, because I've seen this so prevalent in our world, if maybe 80-20 could be our sin nature. Now, don't shoot me. But maybe 80% could be our sin nature and our desires, our base desires for the short term. And maybe our conscience, which knows the nature and what's of God and what's right. just by looking at his general revelation, which is the revelation that we see around us, not his special revelation, which is his word. But just by seeing that, do we 20% of us know what is right, but it's only 20% of us. And 80% of us wakes up every single day and has a desire for the short term. Now, if you're a father, it doesn't take very long for you to recognize that your child that is maybe even recently birthed has a sin nature. And as they grow, we lovingly call it the terrible twos, we can see this sin nature even develop more. My father-in-law jokingly says that if a baby or a toddler had more control and muscle, they get so mad that they would kill everybody around them. They have no self-control. The sin nature is prevalent in us. But as we mature and focus more on the 20%, that's the long-term decisions that are full of wisdom and truth, that 20% can grow stronger and stronger and stronger. And while that 80% that was originally there is still there, our maturity muscles on the 20% can become stronger. But the thing is, my other dad, which is my dad, not my father-in-law, he says adult problems are teen problems that are never resolved. There is the possibility that you've got atrophied muscles in wisdom in some areas of your life. So maybe one area you're strong. Maybe one area of your life is you've developed really good muscles on the 20% of wisdom, the long term versus short term decisions in your life. But there's other areas where you haven't. We see this in maybe you've developed a really strong habit of reading God's word in your life. That's great. But what if you haven't developed the habit of discipleship of your wife and your kids? Maybe you've developed the habit of being a hard worker, and that's fantastic. You've applied wisdom principles to your life there, but you're not present for your family, and so you're missing out on the long-term benefits of being present with your family and with your kids. Just a couple examples, not trying to pick necessarily on just those two. There's many ways that we can be atrophied in wisdom in our lives, and being able to pinpoint those areas and bring them up to the surface and asking God to deal with it is so important. So the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. The type of people that we hang around and also the way we think as well affects how much we seek wisdom in our own life. And our hearts all want that shortcut. They want that shortcut. But also, when we hang around people who also want that shortcut, we tend to want that even more. It's like the mob effect, the crowd effect. So, and all these, I've been there. I've thought I could handle things on my own and tried to outsmart the process. Excuse me. And every time I did, I paid for it, because sin will always have its payday. And so will righteousness. There's a wage for our actions that we do. And that wage doesn't necessarily come always in the short term. It could be a very long-term thing. And this is why it's so important for us to rely on the principles of our eternal and gracious God, who lives outside the test of the bounds of time, and knows where our actions will lead us to. So this is why the first step matters in this Proverbs study over the next 30 days. Wisdom begins with humility. We must bow the knee and say, God, I need your direction more than I need to be right. So today, let's just take a step back. Here's something that you can do. Take 10 quiet minutes, no phone, no noise. Just ask, God, where have I been tuning you out? Where have I been living to that 80% of my debased desires versus seeking the 20% of truth and wisdom and long-term satisfaction in my relationship with you, God? And write those things down. Write them down. When you take something that you've thought through and then you just start writing it down, you really start thinking through it slowly. It makes such an impact for changing the direction of your life. You can't walk in wisdom if you're not willing to stop and be still and hear the voice. And so we could ask today, Lord, to help us fear you more. May God help us fear him more than a fear of failure in our lives. Maybe the fear of discomfort in our lives, or even looking weak. May God help us as men to fight that desire. Teach us to walk in God's ways and not our own ways, even when it's really hard. So this is day one. Let's keep showing up, keep getting up. If you've fallen, a righteous man falls 7 times, but he gets back up. And it's not exactly 7 times, right? It's 7 means innumerable times. A righteous man will get back up no matter what. So let's get back up and be the men that God has called us to be, and seeking the Lord first and seeking wisdom. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a wonderful day.